Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, criminal court, and other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon. And they are also on audio. I'm expecting my third installment of Raised by These Wolves to come out mid-January of 2026. And I have a return guest on. I have Todd Humes. He was last on season 6, episode 341, where we discussed paying alimony and still not divorced and other shady deals that go on in the lovely state of Pennsylvania. And we're going to discuss scare tactics. We're going to discuss the corruption in the domestic relations units. And Todd also had a second protection of abuse order signed with no evidence. And we're going to discuss he still has not been to court for his divorce, and his civil suit against his ex and business partner is still up in the air. Also, we're going to talk about, of course, corrupt lawyers obstructing justice and the corruption inside the courthouses in Pennsylvania. So I welcome you back, Todd Humes. How are you?
Good, Marianne. How are you doing?
Okay. Okay. We've got a lot to cover. So, since we talked last, you know, what's going on in these the corruption in these domestic relations units?
Well, they basically don't help one person. It's like they're all for one, and case in point would be, you know, I think on your first episode, I was, you know, subject to pay her a sum of $1,100. And then as time went on, tried to get my lawyer to go in and say, look, I can't do this. I got all the marital bills plus that. I mean, she was paying a zero, plus she had all the revenue coming from the bar, which I see none of it. So um, then I went to, I called my domestic relations, my caseworker, and I said, um, Denise, is it okay to lie in court? Because one of the lies she said was she got a settlement for her back. And basically, one of the 17 steps is that, the access to money. Okay. She had access to money. Her mother had just passed away. And even though in the state of Pennsylvania, your spouse is not entitled to inheritance, but it is access to money. So the one person, you know, she's not left out in the cold, but I was, because like I said, I was, and I said to Denise, I said, Denise, is it okay to lie in court like she does? And her response was very astonishing. Well, technically, she isn't under oath. And I
What?
was like, that's exactly what she said to me, Marianne. I'm like, and I said, well, gee, I wish I would have checked the rules because I would have just told you I don't work for FedEx. I don't have a job. I mean, I thought you go in there, you tell the truth, and everything's going to be weighed out and it's going to be fair, which, as we can see, in a lot of cases, it's not fair.
Right.
And it's not gender specific either. It's basically, hey, we're going to take out one person and we're just going to put all the burden on that person. And that's not what the law is. And that's the point. They don't go by the law. They'll say they go by the law. They'll give you the, well, this is what the 17 steps said. Well, you didn't go with the 17 steps. So I was very astonished by that remark because, she's a court and she had identified herself as a court official.
Hmm.
So it's like, wait a second, and I was like, so then her statement was, well, you're held to your maximum earning capacity, meaning I can't quit my job and take a lesser job just
Hmm.
for spite, which I wouldn't do anyhow. Um, and then she said to me, well, she's held to her maximum earning capacity. I said, was she working?
Hmm.
And she said, I don't know. And I said, how could you possibly tell me she's held to her maximum earning capacity if you don't know if she's working or not? And then she basically had the audacity to say, um, "You're harassing me," and it's like I'm asking you simple questions that, as a court official, you should answer, not give you this disinformation and lies. I mean, that's really a slap in the face because these people are either elected or they're hired, appointed, but they're supposed to uh, hold up the law. They're supposed to be about the law. What does the law say? They don't want to go by the law.
No.
And and also another situation, like whenever I went back to work, I had went to the bar. They basically ran me out of there, saying they were going to hold me in contempt because she wasn't getting her alimony, even though she left. She just ended up leaving the bar. So
Yeah.
I was getting ready for work, and she said, because I got a notice to appear in court. All right.
Mm.
So I'm getting dressed for work, and she calls me and she said, "Wouldn't you rather just go to work?" I said,
Oh,
"Yeah, I would." I said, and like she was really came off really rough, really condescending, so to speak. And
abrasive.
I was, yeah, there's a lot of adjectives you could use for that lady, but anyway, we'll just stick to that. Um, so anyhow, I said, "Well, Denise, I'll get this paper in the mail saying I must appear or I'll be held in contempt. Or what am I supposed to do?" "Well, you could have called me." And I said, "Well, it didn't say you could have called me. And besides, you haven't done nothing for me anyhow. So why would I even think of calling you? Because the only thing you have done is lie." Because she was kind of really, I think they try to kind of put that bullying tactic in there, like, we're gonna, it's like, you know what, I gotta get ready for work. Is there because she, as I was explaining to her, she said, "Let me interrupt." I said, "No, you let me finish and then you can
Hmm.
chime in." I said, "That just rubs me the wrong way. It's rude."
Right.
So she said, "Well, I can put in another." And basically what I got from that was they don't want me in court. Everything's a bullying tactic to try to scare me. But when you've done nothing wrong, you don't have to be scared. But as we see from your other guests and other people watching this, it's not about it's not about being right or wrong. It's about what they want, and that's not the way it should be.
Right. Right. It's what they can pull next on you as well.
Yes, and because if you go by the law, I would, actually, some people would be, indicted on crimes. We're talking about a lot of money missing. We're talking about taxes that were never filed. That pretty much I can, you know, say on your show with confidence that that home mortgage that I got myself into was nothing but a fraud. But that's another show. But
Hmm.
so yeah, my caseworker, her and I are not exactly on each other's Christmas cards list, if that's put that nicely.
Wow. Did they impute your income to a higher capacity than what you really make? Did they pull
Um,
that?
I, I can't really say that, Marianne, because I gave my W twos, and I do make very good money driving for FedEx Freight, and but what I did, because when you get that letter sent to you, it says, about fighting this. That's just garbage. You might as well take that, throw that right in the trash,
Hmm.
because it's not about them taking all and balancing everything out.
Right.
Like, okay, well, Todd got, he's paying for both houses. He's paying for everything. She's not paying for anything.
Oh,
Even at the bar, she didn't pay for anything because the money from the bar paid for her lodging because she stayed upstairs, paid for the heat, paid for the food.
mm,
Plus, she got $1,100, which in turn turned out to be $1,500 today because I went back to court because of my lawyer. I kept saying, "Look, we got to get this reduced. It's killing me." I
yeah.
mean, we're already on credit. I'm living off of credit cards to survive. That's no way to live, but
No.
that's what I had to do. I mean, I'm trying to keep everything balanced. I'm trying to pay my creditors. And so we go. I call a meeting, and I'm thinking th- they'll see it the right way. Somebody got to say, saying, "Yeah, this is not fair." No, what happened? I went in, and I
Mm.
just happened to get a $10,000 bonus that year for 30 years of safe driving. So
Oh,
what they did was say, "Oh, well, you made more money."
oh,
So gosh, I think we need to give her $300. And you know, when they asked her what her bills were, she had one bill, her phone. That was it. And
Wow,
I
that's
submit like
stealing.
this long list of bills, like, okay, the electric bill, blah, 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 taxes, you know, you name it, the of life. And that's what I had. And, oh, well, you made a lot, you made more money this year because of that bonus. So we're going to award her $300 more a month.
Oh,
So instead of helping me out, they hurt me even worse.
I think they enjoy that.
Well, I think they do, and I think that's as a weapon. So they're basically what they're doing is they're trying to get you to give up.
Uh-huh. And
You know,
just
and in
pay
my
it.
yes, right. They're trying to say, well, if we hurt him hard enough, because what I see what they're doing to this day, what I'm thinking, they're trying to get me to give up everything I own in order to get out of this.
Mm,
They're saying if you want out of it, you got to give us everything you own, and I'm not doing it.
right.
You know, I stay. If I have to, I work extra. I worked extra over the holiday. I'll do what I can because I know that they are in a tight spot legally. If I could find a right attorney or law enforcement officer
Hmm.
with the bar, because that's the whole thing's a fraud. I can prove it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, with that was you know, getting into that, you know, and I was on a Zoom call and like I was just like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, this is the justice system. You know, I
Oh.
mean, somebody that has never been in trouble with the law, has always paid my bills. I mean, you know, it was a gut punch. That's how you feel. It's just like then you get numb to it. It's just like you stop trying.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, as far as like, well, yeah, I'm to this day. I think it'll be 5 years next month that I've been paying alimony.
Terrible.
Yeah, she getting $360 a week out of my paycheck every week, and she is not working. She is nobody really even knows where she's at. Not that I really care.
Hmm.
She's just like MIA, just like, well, do you know? I've been asked, do you know where she's at? I said, no, I have no idea where she's at, which is abandonment, by the way, if you go by the law. But
Right.
you know, as you can see, we don't go by the law in a lot of things in state of Pennsylvania and small court, so family court.
Mm.
So, but the PFA, the second PFA, that was pretty. Nothing really about anybody's case that comes on your show is amusing, but sometimes you got to just shake your head and laugh. Like, how dumb is this?
Right.
So I come home and I'm sitting here like, okay, what do I make myself to eat? It's like six in the evening, Wednesday night, I think. Yeah, it was a Wednesday night. And the doorbell rings, and I don't get many visitors of for source. So when I kind of looked out the door, I seen badges, and I didn't do anything wrong. So I'm thinking, well, maybe they're looking for somebody. Or so I opened the door. They introduced themselves as the Cumberland County Sheriff. Said, "What can I do for you?" Well, you're being served with a PFA. And I looked at him. I said, you got to be kidding me. And I looked at them and I see they weren't kidding, you know, and they said, is your name Todd Humes? Yes. And what's your birthday? I said, 12/16/1966. And I said, I haven't had contact with her in over 2 years. And I said, she has tried to contact me, which I did
Yeah.
not, you know. See, they always say it's against me and not her. But to me, it doesn't make sense because if somebody can antagonize somebody, you're just asking for trouble.
Right.
And you know, on a side note, I had went in for a PFA against her because she kept coming into the house
Right.
under the
Right.
PFA, and they denied it. The judge, Judge Kurtz, out of Huntington, he said, "I can't sign this." I said, "Well, Judge," I said, she's trying to set me up to get arrested. You know, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, where's my piece?
Right.
You know, and he said, "Well, I can't sign this. You're just going to have to lock your windows or, you know, change your locks." I mean, he had all kinds of brilliant ideas. You know, it's like, okay. But again, it's like, where's my protection? Because both, you know, I have to say, you know, to you and to your audience that both the PFAs went without a merit. Matter of fact, I can recite what she said on the PFA. It said, I'm afraid of him. That's it. That is all And she also said that I told her in the last conversation that she was going to jail, which that's basically my goal now, is to put her in jail for stealing, running that business. Who knows what she did
Hmm.
behind it,
Hmm.
why I was wrongfully put out the PFA, because that's why they were. It was not because I ever threatened her, because I never in my life threatened any woman.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't believe in that. But in Pennsylvania, like you said, it's like candy on Halloween. Yeah, sure, sure. Except if, in my case, I don't want to say in all cases, my case, you're a man, you deal with it.
Hmm.
It's almost like they want you to get arrested. We're letting her on free reign to go up and harass you. And when I talk about harass, I mean, think about somebody being able to come into your house, steal things, break things. I came into my house one night. Now, granted, I don't have any money. I mean, they took it all.
Hmm.
They cut all my appliance cords. They cut them. They just took a pair of scissors, a pair of wire cutters,
Who
whatever.
does that?
People that are sick.
Yeah.
But again, where's my protection? So I call the police. Well, there's nothing we can do. That's what I get. I mean, it's so frustrating. And see, the reason, I'd have to put out to your audience would be they were trying to get me because they have the PFAs laid out. Okay. So now we have him like, hey, he's an abuser. Whether he is or not, we got it on paper. So um they wanted me to like, try to contact her and threaten her in some way. And I wasn't falling for it. You know what? I thought, you know what? I'll go out and buy a new George Foreman grill and a new air fryer. And
Hmm.
I guess they were nice. They didn't cut the refrigerator cord, but
Yeah.
maybe they
Well,
thought that was a 220 line I was going to, but
yeah.
that could have ended up with the issues. They did that. But I mean, that's just some of the daily stuff I have to come home to,
So did you have to change your locks? Did you do that?
I did change my locks, but see, the problem is they're somehow getting in even after I change them. And I don't know how, whether they have a lock pick, whether there's a lot of shady stuff that I could go on and on that has happened, but they, seem to find a way in without breaking it.
Hmm.
And again, maybe because it was an old doorknob downstairs, and maybe they took the key, a key to it, and I didn't realize it, and I changed it, and they still have a key to it. But somehow or some way, they just broke in the other night when I was home. When I woke up, yeah, they came in, and that's dangerous. And I'm not about violence, but I told them I will protect myself.
Right, right.
And that's what I said. That's why I come to you to try to get you people to do something, because that's your job.
Hmm.
But if I catch them in my house, I have no recourse but to defend myself, because I don't know if they're there to hurt me,
Hmm.
and I don't want that. But,
Oh,
they don't seem to care, and I just kind of get pat on the back, say, Mr. Humes, you just think everybody's out to get you. And I said, oh, okay. So, yeah, that side note with, as far as the PFA. So, what happened there was, and it didn't even seem like, because see, okay, what happens is the sheriff, okay, they come to, of course, they say, do you have any firearms on you? And I said, well, I carry my 9 millimeters on the table over there. Okay, we got to take that. I mean, they were very polite. And I do understand they're just doing their job, because it's kind of like when I wanted to read them to riot act. It's like, now I got to take it up in court. And then he said, what about your other guns? And I said, well, they're up in Huntington. He said, well, do you know anybody up there you can have them come over and get them? I said, I only had Janet. She was 97, and she was a wonderful lady. She just passed away.
oh
But
no, yeah.
I live out in the middle of nowhere, and I don't
Mm.
really know a lot of people, even though I've lived up there for 20 years, because it's so secluded, and plus with my job being on the road all the time. So he said, well, I'll have my chief call you, and you can make arrangements to turn in your guns, because you have to turn in all your firearms. And of course, that's an
Mhm.
inconvenience. And what was weird was, so again, I took a day off the next work. I said, Said to my boss, I said, "Hey, George, you're not going to believe this." He said, I said, "She had an RPFA." And they've been so supportive at FedEx. I really have to say, they're like my second family. I have to put that out there because, they have been with locks, because they know what I'm going through and they're just really doing everything to help me out. And he said, "Okay, yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it." Well, I'm waiting for the call. I never get the call from this guy. I actually had to call him and I said, "Chief, what do you want me to do? I mean, how do you want me to turn in my firearms? I mean, I'm trying to do it by the
Yeah.
law." So he said, "I'll just turn them into state police when you get up there." Like he didn't even care, you
Oh,
know. All right. So long story short, turn them in to the state police in Huntington, go to a court hearing. It's always 10 days you go to a court hearing. And when I retained an attorney, and she even looked at, she said, "I can't even believe he signed this. There is no, you can't just say, can't just say, I'm afraid of Marianne."
mhm,
You got to have a reason. You got to say, "Well, she came at me with a butcher knife or something." There was nothing there.
mhm.
It was, and even, and she looked at it like, but then here's what's weird about it, and this is where I say the lawyers are kind of like robots. They're not, they're corrupt. She said, "Well, would you take 30 days?" And I said, her name was Deborah. And I said, "Deborah, I didn't do anything wrong. I haven't had contact with her in 2 years. Why should I take 30 seconds? It's just the principle of things." So she kind of left it go, but I started to realize that's what they want. That's exactly what they want.
Mhm.
So we go into court, and I thought it was very unprofessional because she was sitting down at the other end of like outside the courtroom. And she went down and talked to her, and I'm thinking, why are you talking to her? You're supposed to be representing me.
Yeah.
So we go into court, and again, uh, there's no court reporter there. I noticed that right off the bat, and of course, she gets up. And I mean, the audacity of somebody just to sit there and lie. But I guess, hey, if they're going to let her get away with it, she's
Oh, yeah.
going to do. And she gets up, and she said that I threatened to burn the bar down.
Mm.
And the judge, Marion, this really got me. The judge turned around and gave me an evilest eye I ever got in my life. Now, how professional is that?
Well, they're not.
Yeah. Well, I knew right then and there what the case was, and I decided to choose my battle. So basically, I leaned over to Deborah and I said, "Look, I don't care if I ever see this woman. Matter of fact, it would be a blessing to me that I never see her again the rest of my life. But I will take the 30 days, but I want something in return."
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. I said, I mean, because 30 days, okay, big deal. I went, but again, my first one was 6 months. Why 30 days? I'll tell you why. She needed 30 days to get out with the money from the bar. That's why that was what I knew exactly what that was all about. She's getting ready to bail. I guess maybe somebody was starting to really look into things and they got scared and they thought, we got to get out. And they cleaned the place out.
Hmm.
So I said, well, she said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "Well, she accused me of throwing all her belongings away," which actually I have a right after, at that time, it was 5 years. Because I think the law is 30 to 60 days after a person leaves the premises that they have to get their personal belongings out, clothing, what have you. And she never did that. But then she accused me in court, family court, of throwing her stuff out, which I actually didn't. I mean, some of her stuff is still here. I guess I should throw it out, but I haven't. But
Well,
um,
possession is 9/10 of the law.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it was in her mind. She's thinking as long as she has stuff here, that she's entitled to the house.
Oh, this doesn't
Yeah,
work that
she
way,
has a she has a different way of thinking, and
I guess.
yeah, sometimes that could be a daunting and a very scary thought to
Yeah.
get in her mind. So the judge said, "Okay, okay, we agree on that. You got to get," and he wrote down, "You got to get your stuff out. You have to have a constable with you. Mr. Humes has to be present. If he did, if something comes out to say, oh, no, 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 that's marital property, that has to be divvied up, it
Hmm.
stops right then there." Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm happy with that. Okay. I can go 30 days. It's not a big deal.
Hmm.
It was never followed through. My lawyer never put her, it was basically just to appease me to get me out of court. And again, the transcripts were never there. So it's just so frustrating because I think when you're growing up and you're told to trust the justice system, and then when you unfortunately
Yeah.
have to deal with them in any manner, and you're dealt with what you went through, with your a lot of your guests have went through. I feel for them because we're all in the same boat. We've all been, tossed. And it's a shock because you're thinking, okay, well, hey, this is court. They're going to see the truth. It's not the case.
No, no, and we were talking earlier before we, got here that how did you put it? It just it's there were hearings that you even question if they even took place.
Yes, the hearing I just talked about, again, there's no, okay, that took place, but the first hearing, I was never invited into the courtroom. So how could that possibly be a fair hearing? Because you have a person accusing you of um threatening, well, just, it was just all kinds of crazy made up stuff. I mean, it was just like, wow, I married that person. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah. And okay, and I'm sitting there calm as could be because again, I realized I never threatened her. I never, there's no evidence to it. And it eventually was thrown out. But at that time, yes, because I was never invited in the courtroom. I basically was giving a deal, remember, and
Mhm.
saying, hey, you take your 6 months, or else if you come in and the judge sees her side, you're going to get 3 years and a permanent. And a permanent is basically like a felony. It can excuse you, well, just like from a job. It
Yeah.
could, just for being on your record, and it might not have any merit to it, but if it's on your record, an employer might say, well, he may have some issues here. We're not going to hire him. So I reluctantly took the 6 months. But when I went back to get some transcripts, because I was curious to see what was said in her version, they didn't have any. And this is a good one too, because this is how corrupted. It's not just inside, like you're saying, judges and lawyers. It's going inside
Oh,
the
yes.
clerical. Yes. And when I called the prothonotary office and I said, well, February 10th, I was in for a PFA hearing. I just like the transcripts to them, and they have to give them to you. They have to, and it's all public record. I mean, and she said, well, we don't have transcripts to. So what do you mean you don't have transcripts to that hearing? And she said, sometimes we take them, sometimes we don't. And I'm like, what do you do? Come in the morning and play rock, paper, scissors, flip a
Yeah.
coin? I mean, what? I mean, I've talked to attorneys. I get the, and I say to them, and they say, no, if there's a court hearing, there has to be a court reporter. There has to be recordings because obviously what was said in one hearing, if you get a new attorney, they have to know what was said in that court hearing and so
Right.
forth. And so I strike that up as basically that court hearing was just staged. I mean, prove me wrong. I mean, if you don't have any transcripts to say it ever what happened, and then I got transcripts to a hearing that I was before. And when I called the lady at the prothonotary's office and I said, hey, I got these transcripts, and she said, for what? For what hearing? And I said, well, it happened on October 12th. And it was over the phone. Found out that that was not their protocol. You don't have court hearings over the phone. Maybe you did during the COVID era, but not this was after the COVID. And she said, well, we don't have that on record. So she doesn't have this on record, but yet I got transcripts, and actually, if you read the transcripts, because I was muted out, I remember we touched on that near my first,
Uh-huh.
and I questioned whether that ever took place or whether that was just a staged, hey, we're going through the motions to make you think that we're giving you a fair court trial, and it goes the whole way down to, even into district or into justice of peace. Even goes down there because I took my first lawyer to court because he took $6,500 for me and he never filed one thing. He didn't even file his name to represent me in court, which I keep asking a court report, a court official. Well, isn't that protocol? Like you have to know who's representing you. And that was the thing I have to back up on my story. They didn't know who my lawyer was on that first PFA. They said, "Who represented you?" I said, "You don't know."
Oh no.
So what else would I say? What would your audience think? It was staged.
Hmm.
It was just staged and a scare tactic to make me take 6 months. So in my case, I could speak for because I questioned money missing. We got to get him out of here because we got to keep stealing money. And if he's there, he's going to figure it all out.
Hmm.
I already did. So that, and again, the lawyers just sit there because I have to. They get their little cliche, their little catchy. We fight for you.
Oh yeah.
That's why I didn't know they don't. Because when she went up there, she got up on stage or on the stand, and I don't even know if he swore her in. To be honest with you, I can't even think.
And if you had
And
the transcripts, you'd know.
yeah, but see, there was no transcripts.
Yeah.
And the first thing she said, "Well, I'm getting tired of being harassed." No, I have not harassed her in any way. I had not, like when the PFA was there, I absolutely you have to walk on eggshells. You can't answer the phone if you don't know who it is. You can't answer an email, any form of contact.
Right,
You
right.
will get thrown in jail. And trust me, they tried me. They tried me. I was getting emails with her CC'd in them because I was talking to my one accountant for the business. And I said, "Hey, Stephen, she's CC'd in there. I can't answer you on this." He said, "Well, that's okay." I said, "No, it's not okay because technically it could be considered contact.
Uh,
We can talk privately on email or phone, but I am not answering you." And that was on a text message, so she didn't get it. So it just was. They tried everything because I really truly believe, Marianne, that they were trying to throw me in jail.
mhm.
They were trying to throw me in jail so they could keep stealing and get away with what they
Oh,
did.
this is just terrible.
And as far as like the second PF, the second PFA was just like that was the second one. But again, why would a judge, the same judge that dismissed the first one under the fact that I represented myself, and it was Judge Walsh, and I thought that day I thought he was a very fair judge at that time, and he said because my of course my lawyer didn't show up, and he said, "Well, we can take continuance." So he let me talk, and that's kind of rare.
Yeah.
And I pointed out that, well, Judge, there's no evidence. I mean, where's the evidence showing that abusive? Where's the pictures? All the stuff that you should have to prove that I'm abusive.
Mhm, mhm.
And there was none. So he dismissed it. But then he turned around 2 years later and signed this PFA. And everybody was saying, I can't believe, even the judge that day, Judge Stewart, kind of was looking at him and he said, "Ma'am, this does not," talking to my stranger, "this does not constitute a PFA. We have to have evidence of a PFA."
Mhm.
So right there and then, I'm still thinking until I got that. He had a real good evil eye. I mean, it was like he must have practiced it in the mirror or something because it
Oh,
was
sure.
like,
On other people.
yeah. Well, again, he was basically, that was his sign of saying, "Mr. Humes, you will take the 30 days. We don't care what the evidence shows." And that's the case. So um, it's just been, you know, uh, very disheartening, I would say, because like I said, every time I walked into the court, because then I got drug into court. This is from no, this is from her attorney for contempt. I was being held on contempt. And see, again, I think you and I agree, and everybody listening would say, yeah, this is all a scare tactic. We're going to keep him running into court. He's going to be so frantic, he's just going to give up. And well, I sold a vehicle that was mine because she failed to pay property taxes to the bar. Okay. So I found out there was like $4,100 that needed paid. I didn't have the money because they ordered what they didn't award her, she stole.
Right,
You know?
right.
So, I
She should be
mean,
able to afford to pay it.
well, being that I did find this is something they didn't want me to find that the bar had made, and this is a low number because I can guarantee you $760,000 in the year 2021 was the cash revenue. Where's it at? Why didn't she pay? Why did she pay the taxes? Because so I sold the car. Well, her lawyer turned around and said, "We're holding you in contempt because that car was marital property. You weren't allowed to sell." Well, first of all, it was only in my name. Second of all, what did you want me to do? So we go into this court, and I by that time I'm on lawyer number 4,
Oh,
and and I'm basically just telling Ron, just get me a divorce at this time. I'm not fighting whether she gets, but see, the whole point was they do not want her to give up anything that I was entitled to, such as her settlement, which I gave her an out. I mean, there was a point where I just said, look, I don't want her settlement. Just sign the papers, get out, but I get to keep my stuff. No, they didn't want that. They wanted me to give her all my stuff, like 401k, pension, all that stuff. But
oh.
yet she gets to keep all that stuff that I'm entitled to. And I gave her an out on that. And they didn't bite on that. So we go into court, and he called me up the night before, which I usually do, and he said, look, I'm just going to put you on stand because I had to cancel check from the county, for paying the taxes. I had, the sales receipt for what I sold the car for, um, which basically offset. Basically what I sold the car for, I paid in taxes. There was no leftover. There was no revenue, equity or anything. So we go in, and the first thing he does, he shows up late. The first thing he does, he said, "Hey, I need to see you out in the hallway." And I said, "Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
yeah.
I need to see you out in the old hallway."
Yeah.
Okay. So we go out in the hallway, and he said, "Oh, look," he said, and he's fumbling around trying to. I said, "Ron, what is the problem?" He said, "Well," and I said, "Look, first of all, because what the restitution was, her lawyer wanted me to pay $3,000." And I just told him, I said, "Look, I don't have it. If the judge rules him in that favor, he's going to have to take a payment plan because guess what? Todd does not have the 3,000. You
Mm.
stole everything I have. Nobody has came up and have basically, you know, instilled my rights and saying, hey, this is wrong. And that's one of the reasons why, because I have not had a lawyer to this day step up and represent me."
I'm so sorry. You're being completely railroaded.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it is frustrating, and it's wrong. And I think as all Americans, we hold our justice system one of the most, the Constitution. And guess what? I read the Constitution, and I'll tell you what, Marianne, your name wasn't on it. Well, exempt from it. Mine wasn't exempt from it. None of your guests were exempt from it.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what we're getting here. Our constitutional rights violated.
Hmm.
I mean, there's no other way to explain it because, like in my case, I would say due process. Where's my due process? I've been wanting to go to court. I've been wanting to get this straight out so I can go on with my life. I can't
Right.
go on with my life because basically I'm saddled with this divorce burden that they're holding me to. And while people go on vacation, I have to, and I don't mind working, but I can't do the things I used to like to do because the money's tight still. Getting so when we go into that court, so we're sitting like here. Of course she's sitting there. I can't even look over that way, and I pulled out all these documents. I kind of rehearsed in my head what I'm going to tell the judge, the truth.
Hmm.
It wasn't
Hmm.
hard. I'm just going to tell him the truth. What are you going to do? Put me in jail for paying taxes? For gosh sakes!
Yeah.
What are you in jail for? Paying taxes?
Oh,
I mean, how dumb would that be? So we're sitting there, and the two lawyers, her lawyer, and see, her lawyer, I think, is controlling my lawyers. They're colluding, which is totally illegal or unethical at best. They're not. I understand they have to talk. But she's basically saying, "Look, don't represent him properly." Because I can honestly say the four lawyers I had, that's what I get. I don't get represented. Her lawyer has not been challenged in anything. My lawyers just sit there like it's like
choir
I want to,
boys.
Like, I like want to nudge him, like, hey, you still breathing? She just said something. And if I'm an attorney, I would be like, I'd be all over that, like, in an argue the facts. And so they're back there in this room for like 20 minutes. I do have a court reporter every day. She's sitting in front of me. Sheriff's sitting over there. You know who's sitting over there. I can't even look over. I'm just thumbing through and they're kind of chit chatting and they're back there in the back.
Mm.
Now I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what is going on? So it had about 20 minutes later, they come out. He waves me over and he said, so we get out in the hall and I said, Ron, what was that? A mafia sit down? What?
Yeah.
I mean, he said, well, they agreed they need to move on. Now this been a year and a half ago, Marianne, and we are still in the same boat as I was 5 years ago.
Oh my
Because I
gosh.
because basically what I told Ron was fourth attorney, which I told all the other attorneys, same thing. Just get me a divorce. But
Hmm.
see, they're trying to act like we're not, or they're somewhat blaming me, saying, excuse me, you're not agreeing to anything. Well, I'm not agreeing to giving up everything I've worked for. That's no, we're not doing that.
Right.
I want what the law says. If she's entitled to it, fine. But if I'm entitled to it, I want my fair share too. I've paid. I mean, in our marriage, I paid for it. I mean, her work ethic was very lacking.
Oh, yeah, but she's doing great in court. Funny
She's
how
doing
that
great in
works.
life. The first thing she did when she left the bar, guess where she went? She went to Key West.
Ah,
Hey, when you got money, you can do that.
yeah.
It's my money. And she no tax. And remember, no taxes ever were paid. No state, federal, local. No sales tax were ever paid. But you know what's strange? The phone never rings. You would think they would be calling me saying, "Where's my money?" I've called them,
Hmm.
and they were just like, "What do you want me to do about it?" I mean, so all the taxpayers out there are getting screwed over. This whole story is just nuts.
Uh,
And we keep fighting. We keep hopefully your podcast will produce. Somebody will say, "Yeah, well, I know. Even if you can't help me, I know somebody that might. And that would be wonderful because I've called lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, and I'm sensing that they know that this is going on, and they don't want to get involved. That's why I can't retain counsel.
oh, because they know the case is fixed.
Yeah, like the one I had um put a call into him wanting to retain because I realized at this time lawyer number three wasn't going to do anything. I mean, she's been my attorney for over 2 years and has not done one thing, not one, you know, not one court filing, on my behalf. I have never been into court. Yes, I've just talked about being into court for PFAs. I've been into court for, you know, uh, for so-called contempt, but never on my side saying, "Hey, this needs to be straightened out." That side is not cooperating.
Uh-uh.
And see, that's what this lawyer told me. And the conversation was really good, even though he did take my case, because he said, "You're sending out a lot of red flags." And at first you get a complex like, what me? No, what he was saying was, this doesn't sound right, and I don't want to get involved. Meaning, and I truly believe that the law community knows this is going on,
Hmm.
and they don't want to get involved. Like you're telling me, and it's not making sense to me why an attorney. This is kind of textbook 101 on divorce. Why your attorney wouldn't go to the court and say, "Look, the other side is not cooperating. You need to make them." I said, I've actually instructed her to do that. I said, "Look, give them a couple weeks. Here's my offer. Give them a couple weeks. If they don't get back to you, go into the court and get them into court." And she would not do it. She wouldn't. And that's why I feel strongly believe that her that her attorney was
Mhm.
calling over there saying, hey, just they're trying to wait me out is what they're doing.
Well, her attorney obviously is not acting ethical, but he is also complicit in the stealing.
Yes, because they are, probably to get, it's not so much divorce. They're basically extorting my rights and my divorce, thinking they're waiting me. So I sell that bar. The bar has been sitting out there empty for 3 years, and they haven't foreclosed on it. They have been wanting me, and they've been, like you and I talked about before on air, they're sending me letters saying we're having a sheriff sale on your house in Enola, which is the Harrisburg area. All right. Yeah, I know that's not how it works. They have to contact my mortgage, my Citizens Bank.
Mhm.
I contacted Citizens Bank and let them know that, hey, this is a fraud and don't fall for it. I was hoping they would get involved, but they didn't. And they said that there's none to worry because they would have to contact us because we hold the primary mortgage. You can't just come in and take it because
Mhm.
there's other liens on it. So, and I know that's how it works, but I get this scare tactic from some lawyer in Philadelphia saying, we're having a sheriff sale on the 9th. Well, first of all, the sheriff would show up. That's how it works. The sheriff should show up and tell you they're having a sheriff sale. So you get this letter from it. It's a scare letter, and it's like I told you, I felt like texting him back saying, "Hey, I'm probably going to be at work, so if I'm not there, start without me." I mean,
Oh,
I kind of laugh sometimes. It's like, how dumb do they think I am? I mean, I know I'm a truck driver, but and yes, I was dumb for getting myself in this mess for being too trusting.
oh,
But it's not illegal to be
right,
naive, trusting. I mean, people get defrauded every day.
right. You didn't know you were marrying a personality disorder.
To say the least.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, when you brought up these lawyers, my opposing attorney, we were supposed to argue in the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, and he had his secretary call up the day before and say, "Oh, just to let you know, that has been canceled."
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, let me call up the Superior Court myself." And I called it quarter four. "Oh no, you guys are still on."
Oh, so he wanted you not to show up, so be thrown.
Right,
See, that is just dirty pool. That is dirty pool. That should not. That should be. And if you go to the bar, they don't care.
right.
I've because everybody kind of been through this with me, my friends and so family and so forth. We'll go to the bar. I've been there.
Mhm.
They don't care. It's almost like they're all in it together, and nobody wants to not get invited to the bar Christmas party. And if they do, they don't want to get shunned while they're there. So
Right.
I mean, and I hate to say it because you know what, we hold lawyers to a high standard. They go through a lot of education to get their license, and I respect that. I do, but I don't respect that you don't use that, and you're getting a client, and you're not representing them to their best interest. Like you're trying to basically throw them under the bus and take the money. That,
Hmm.
that to me doesn't go well wrong. I mean, you were an RN, you did your job. I'm a truck driver. I'm 4 million miles to
Hmm.
my credit, no accidents. I take that in high regard because you're the motoring public, and I take it seriously that if one wrong move and somebody could get hurt or die.
Hmm.
And that's my worst fear is being a driver is
Hmm.
not really so much me dying, but hurting somebody else. And we see all the bad drivers out there, and we know all about
Right.
the illegal licenses. That's another show. But I can only drive my truck, and I do it professionally, and they pay me very well to do it,
Yeah.
and I take it seriously. But I expect when somebody pay when you charge somebody, I have been charged no less than $220 an hour. Okay. So, do you know anybody that makes $220 an hour off the bat? And I'm
Some,
not saying if they do their job, they're well worth it. But when you don't do your job, and I basically lost everything out of 5 attorneys, and I have basically lost everything. I'm clinging on to my house. So I'm doing all right. But I'm working my tail off and it shouldn't be this. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to settle this out of court, They don't want it to go to court. That's why there's no transcripts, and that's very, what would you say, appalling to me.
Hmm.
To me, all because how many cases have you heard? Like, have we were watching the news, and whether it's a murder case or fraud, whatever case it is, and a judge had to dismiss it because of things were not right. And you might say, well, no, but if it had all the I's have to be dotted, all the T's crossed, and these people aren't even, they're crossing the I's and T's because they're not even filing anything on my behalf.
No.
And that, I mean, probably where my next step's going to go is, I guess, lawyer number 4 is going to go, and I'm going to have to try lawyer number 5. And
Oh,
we'll probably be back on your show saying, hopefully, maybe I'll have good news, but I have a feeling. Yeah, because see, what I'm finding out is these lawyers are talking to my former attorneys, and they don't have to talk. They shouldn't be talking to them about my case. I found out from a really good lawyer out in Pittsburgh, and she was well out of my price range, but she gave me some very solid, um, I wouldn't say advice, but basically she sounded like she was by the book. And if she was to represent you or me, she was going to represent you and me to the fullest extent of the law.
hmm.
Because when I started talking about my case, she stopped me and said, no, 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 no. She said, your lawyer would not want me to talk. You telling me about your case.
Mm.
And so that kind of was like in my brain. So why are my other attorneys, like my third attorney would say, oh, I just talked to your second attorney. And I said, why? There's a reason why I fired her, because she lied to me, a bold-faced lie.
Mm.
She's the one who found out that the mortgage was only in my name, and that would have been huge
Oh,
because I could have had them dismiss this, and then she retracted it.
huh.
And so basically, what my feeling is, that lawyer basically was telling her, "Hey, you got to stick with the program here," because that's what I keep getting. Even my business attorney for the bar for the civil suit, he even said to me, he said, well, you get another attorney, have him call me. I'll get him up to date. I said, why would I have him call you? You didn't do anything.
Right,
I
right.
lost my business. I lost all the money. No taxes were paid. And you sat back and did nothing. And just like we discussed, one of the things that hurts me the most about this, I was pleading with them. I said, my dad is in ill health. He lives in Arizona.
Mm.
And I said, I wish you would get this started so I could go down and visit him, because I didn't have the money to go down and visit him. He lived, and I knew it was a matter of time before he was going to die. And I do hold that a resentment,
Oh,
pretty
I would
high,
be, yeah.
because it's like they didn't care. They still wanted what they wanted, not what I was entitled to under the law. And that's not what they go basically on you being naive. And
Mm.
fortunately, we do have, just like your podcast and stuff, people that get in this situation, whatever it may be, and they feel like their lawyer is not doing the right thing. They can check with other attorneys. They could check with your podcast, because you represented yourself, had to represent yourself in other cases, and you did pretty well.
Mm.
I know they don't like that. That's probably why. You
Yeah.
know, they
Oh,
don't like to be.
well.
But you know what, Marianne? The truth is the truth.
Hmm.
You can't change the truth in that in any way. And what does my whole story show is fraudulent. You know, they're trying to go take this in a different direction. And like I said, it's not so much the divorce. They're trying to get me to help them sell the bar, that now they realize I figured this is a complete and utter fraud. You can't tell me otherwise, because I called the IRS with my EIN number, which is your business number,
Hmm.
your tax number. They have no record of it. They have no record of it. I was audited, have no record of the audit. So now you have a person that pretended to be an IRS agent that I met with, but I thought something was off. She never showed me credentials like her badge. And when I called the IRS and tried to sort this mess out, they always answered the phone, always gave their ID number and their name. And I even asked one of the agents, I said, is that protocol for IRS? She said, yes. Every time, if we meet you in pro, we have to. She didn't.
Mm.
I think she was sent there. And I mean, I know my story gets crazy, but it's like now you're having people impersonate IRS agents
Uh-huh.
because she didn't file any taxes because I couldn't. I didn't have the, she cut me off of all documents, all the information. I told my lawyer, I told my accountant, you got to get her to do the taxes. She never did. And I think, again, that was by design because I don't think the business was on paper legal. I think it was a shell business like you're seeing in the news. And because again, it's been 3 years, I haven't heard anything from any tax, any legal, any lawyers saying or IRS agent, nothing. I've called. I got a documentation from the audit, which she kind of refused to give me. She said, "Well, I have to give it to her because she was in charge." It's like, oh no, I'm supposed to own that business too, and I paid for that business.
Hmm.
You will give me an audit. But when she gave it to me, there was no documents to back up the audit. Like when you do the taxes, you send in your W-2s and your bank statements for any type of tax deductions you get. There was nothing there to substantiate. Okay, you bought this amount of food, this amount of alcohol.
Yeah.
There was nothing there. It was just a bunch of numbers that anybody could have wrote down a bunch of numbers. There was, that was, and that's why the IRS said, well, we have no record of that. And that was very disturbing to me. And
Yeah.
that's the reason why, maybe your guests are out there saying, well, why can't I get after 7 years now? It's because they know they're caught in that fraud. And they think if they hold me out on this divorce, I will cooperate and help them sell it to the next criminal.
Hmm.
I do believe that the money out of the bar was not the only thing that was being stolen. I happen to believe that there might have been drug activity out the back door, human
Hmm.
trafficking out the back door. These people have a lot of money, so they can pay a lot of people off. State police won't talk to me. DA won't talk to me. AG won't talk to me. Nobody in this state of Pennsylvania that holds that type of title or power will talk to me, other than the fact that maybe they'll talk to me to find out what I know. But then here's what I get. There's nothing we can do. It's like, well, what are you in that position for?
Hmm.
I'm telling you, you didn't get, you would think you didn't get your money. Usually, okay, maybe if you get, you didn't get your money, that's fine. But usually when the government don't get their money, they're usually up in arms
Hmm. Hmm.
and they're
And
going to
they'll
go,
even put you on a payment plan. You know?
oh yeah, they'll work with you. I've been on the payment plan. I had to pay crazy taxes when I took that money out of my
Oh yeah.
401k.
Well, you know what would is scary? 'Cause, I mean, I won't keep you all afternoon, but even if you, s- I don't know, sold that bar to her or got rid of it, they still won't give you the divorce. That's what's scary.
Well, what scares me is what is my name on that I don't know about?
Oh, that too. Yes.
That's why I won't, because I have asked the obvious questions and they won't answer them. They won't answer. So where's with taxes? Just the questions that you should be able as a business owner say, okay, here's the taxes, here's the revenue, here's what we bought. They can't answer anything. And she was instructed. I have a court order from a judge in Westmoreland that she had to do taxes and she had to do an audit.
Mm.
And then I get my attorney stating that my attorney basically said, he said, you have that? I said, yes. And it says right there, she must do taxes because I took her to court. I said, and believe me, that was like pulling teeth. They did not want to go to court. And they always pick one word out. And he calls me back and he said, it said, it must comply. I said, well, what's the word? He said, comply. I said, do we need to Google what the word comply means? Are you serious, Ron? I mean, are you serious now? It says you must comply to this court order. And that's been 2 years ago,
Uh,
3 years ago. Never, because she can't pass an audit. She can't. They know it. They
Oh,
have protected her every step of the way. So,
well, I'm glad we talked and
yeah,
love to have you back for an update. And hopefully this case will turn around and you'll be released from this indentured servitude.
we can only pray. We can pray to God. I pray to
Oh,
God every day. So, and we keep fighting because one thing my dad said before he died, there's two things, and it breaks my heart. My dad said, "Don't quit fighting." He realizes I was in some kind of crazy thing. My
oh,
dad was a very intelligent man, and he also kept asking me if I was going to be okay. And I said, "Dad, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine." But he worried to me to his last breath.
oh,
And I promised, and I promise him today, I won't quit. It's not a, I have to put this in before we leave. It's not about the money anymore. It's about justice. I
mhm.
want to see justice, and people that did me wrong did anybody wrong. Any one of yours said, we want justice. It's not about the money, dude. I'll probably never get that money back. Oh, well, I'll make more. But these people, out of the kindness of my heart, I gave them an opportunity. They took me across, and they need to be brought to court and tried for criminals.
Mhm, mhm. And they need to toe the line and they need to know that God is watching and God is going to deal with them.
Yep. Other than that, hey, we
Yeah.
keep working. We're hanging in there. We're doing okay, and I appreciate what all you do for everybody, and putting the word out because we need somebody like Marianne to do that. I mean,
Mhm.
we this shouldn't be an issue. You should be talking about funner things, like you said, like your horses and your guitars and stuff, and
Yeah.
happy things. But unfortunately, this is a serious issue, and
This is very serious. Oh, I could go on. But how can people reach you if they have any questions?
I got an email address. It's all lowercase. It's T Humes, Humes,
Mhm.
42 at gmail.com.
Okay, well, hey, don't jump off, okay, Todd?
Okay.
Okay, Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe and share. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms even I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Todd Humes, and keep speaking out. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Appreciate it.